Hello, everybody. As tempted as I am to linger in that lovely space of everybody entering, I think we'll start promptly today. So welcome once again to the Sound Arts lecture series. I sound or feel like a broken record for those who have attended every week, but I'm going to keep doing this. So my name is Mark Peter Wright, acting course leader on the BA Sound Arts and member of CRISAP, which also hosts this series of talk. CRISAP, as you know, is the Creative Research into Sound Arts Practice Centre here at LCC. We're very, very happy to have Hongkai Wang with us today, and I'll introduce Hongkai soon. But first, I will go through the housekeeping, as always. And as always, I will say that this is a lovely space. It's a space where the public meet, students from the BA, the MA, PhD, all mix, and I think that's a very unique and wonderful thing that we have here. And I'm very happy that this term as well, members of the public have been attending in quite good numbers, and it'd be great to see you all here again. So thank you, like deeply thank you for coming. It's really, really important. Okay, so housekeeping bits, as always. UAL students, please can you make sure your names are on your screen so that you can be identified. External members of the public, please put your name on there as well, your full name. We might have to ask you to leave if we can't identify you. These are things I have to say. Again, another reminder that it is a public forum. The chat messaging is archived. That's a good way to remember that it's public. All microphones, I think, are off, and the sessions are recorded. For today, Hongkai is keen to have the chat quite active, and also if you have questions that come up throughout the talk, we can take them and interweave them into the talk and the presentation as much as possible, and I will keep my eye on the chat and try to moderate that as and when it happens. So it may not be that we bank everything up to the end, is another way of saying this. So let's see how it goes. So if you have questions, burning things, pop them in the chat and I'll try and pick them up as we go. Here we go, our lovely QR code for students, for attendance. Please scan this. I'll pop this in the chat as always. The code is TTJAA4, I believe. And again, just reiterating that it is a lovely space to ask questions. And you know, last week was a great example of just heaps and heaps of questions coming out through the talk, and it was really great to see that. And also just tuning up small details, you know, wanting to know a tiny thing that can be expanded in a conversation is a lovely way to think about a question. It doesn't have to be a huge philosophical detour, well, it can be. So pop them all in the chat and I'll try and pick them up as we go, as and where applicable. And I'm sure you've read Hongkai's bio and had a look at her website. I'm just going to read the first paragraph of the bio and then hand over to Hongkai, who will take us on from here. So Hongkai is an artist who works across exhibition making, performance, publication, and teaching. Her research-based practice is informed by the unceasing tension between languages, ideologies, identities, and knowledge regimes. Her work queries the politics of listening and knowing at the intersections of lived experience, power, and pedagogy. Through experimentation with modes of sonic sociality, she seeks to conceive of emergent time spaces that critically interweaves histories of labour, economies of cohabitation, formations of knowledge, and the production of desire. That is amazing. I'm not going to go through the huge international list of galleries and exhibition spaces. They'll probably pop up in some of the talk. But before I want to also, in the book that many of you have been reading, Sound Arts Now, which is a book published by CRISAP, full of incredible interviews, of which Hongkai is one of them. So do remember to pick that book up if you haven't already. Okay, that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over now. Thank you so much, Hongkai. Thank you. I'll stop this.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much for Mark and Chrisap's invitation. It's a really a great pleasure for me to be sharing some of my recent work with you. And so I would like this presentation to be as informal and casual as possible. So feel free to ask questions and as I'm moving along with my presentation. And I have prepared 4 projects. I am not sure if there's enough time for me to get to all of them, but I think that's fine. We will just see how it goes. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen. So the very first, so this project is called The Flesh and the Phantom, and it's a performance and a workshop project that I recently realized in Zurich, Switzerland, as a part of the Sonic Topology Sound Art Festival, organized by the Institute of Landscape Architecture, ETH, Zurich. Unfortunately, I don't have the audio recording for this project, but that's okay. I'm going to I'm gonna read a little bit of the script as I am browsing through the slides, so that you can get a sense of how the performance might sound like in the space. I think that you probably can read the description of the project. So when Zurich opted to build Reservoir Liren 20 years ago, the Hakka is a minority ethnic group in Taiwan. The Hakka village of Melong in Taiwan has spent decades protesting against the construction of a reservoir since the early 1990s. And the notion, so in relation to the notion of the reservoir construction, has had a tremendous impact on the natural and the human. I'm sorry, I cannot really see my project description. Sorry. Okay. And the notion of reservoir construction has had a tremendous impact on the natural and the landscape of locality. So my interest for when I received the commission of this project is why did the resident in Liren agree to have this reservoir built, while almost exactly the same time ago, the Hakka village of Melong in southern Taiwan, they adamantly rejected the construction of this big reservoir. So in order to make a dialogue, or you could call it interlocution, between these two vastly different choices, I try to create a connection between these two spaces. They are very far away from one another, and I went to the Melong, make sound recording of the sound of this Hakka village, which are the sound that the villager and the resident and the community organizer try really hard to preserve. And as well, and I also collected a sound from the archive, the sound of the dissidents, the sound of the organizing, the mobilizing of the entire island against the construction of this reservoir. So the material that I collected come from both nature, whether it's seismic, aquatic, or even vibratory from the tropical forests, and the inhabitant of their cultural heritage and their collective psyche, and a chronicle of descent. So what I did is I wrote a sort of poetic script, and I brought this script to Zurich and worked with 5 local artists and performers. And we had a 2 days workshop. We discussed how we are going to interpret this script. And this is the slide, the process of our workshop. And I want to show you a little bit of the space. It's a really amazing space. So the city built this reservoir about 20 years ago, not for any immediate use, but more for a possible shortage of water. So this space exists, and it was built pretty much for the futuristic anxiety. And so when we were navigating the space, we realized when we are moving and trying to talk to each other, we couldn't really hear each other very well when we are more than 1 meter apart. So so in the process of thinking together, discussing and listening, and reading and reenacting the script together, we came up with a protocol collectively. And we agreed that no matter how we move inside the space during the performance, we would never be farther apart from one another than 1 meter. So I'm going to read some paragraph of the script so that you can get a little bit sense. And when I'm reading it, you can imagine that they are sounds of the water, the forest, the birds, the insects, and the sound of daily life from this village, Hakka village in Taiwan. In Wu Mingyi's novel, The Man with Compound Eyes, the main character says, people don't realize they need to rely on the memory of other organisms to survive. You think that the flowers bloom in colorful profusion just to please your eyes, that a wild boar exists just to provide meat for your table, that a fish takes the bait just for your sake, that a stone falling into a gorge is of no significance, that a sambar deer, its head bent low to sip at a creek, is not a revelation, when in fact the finest movement of any organism represents a change in an ecosystem. Can we hear the frequencies emanated from this finest movement of any organism, from the memories of other organisms, and from our shared history of survival? In Maebashi, a small Hakka town in southern Taiwan surrounded by mountains and waters. Because the Yellow Butterfly Valley, because the tropical viviparous forest, because the sweetness in the air, because the mist after rain, because the betel nut tree in the wind, because the fairy pita birds, because the tobacco flowers, because the rice paddies, because the wild white water snowflakes, because the 5 fault lines below your feet, because the soft soil and the shell rock foundation, because the plant reservoir is ill-designed, because the groundwater that comes from the rain and the aquifer, because the river rectification is far more needed than a reservoir. Because if the reservoir broke, the whole town would be submerged in the water. Because it would be merely 1,500 meters from the nearest village downstream. Because the Hakka culture in urgent need of preservation. Because the memories of your community. Because the form of life. Saidiya Hartman notes as such, how can narrative embody life in words and at the same time respect what we cannot know? How does one listen for the groans and cries, the undecipherable songs, the crackle of fire in the cane field, the laments for the dead, and the shout of victory, and the assigned words all of it. You have been singing since 1993. You sing to protest against the future construction of a phantasmic reservoir. You sing, if a reservoir can be built, you would rather eat shit at every protest. You sing on a bus from Meinong all the way to Taipei overnight. You sing in front of the presidential hall and the parliament, on the streets, at the town halls, in the park and the woods, at school, you name it. You sing about the hills, the mountain, the rivers, the creeks, the artesian waters, the land, the history, the crops, the animal, and your daily lives. You sing your home. You sing like the way you sing your Haga hill songs, like the way your ancestors used to sing between hills. You sing antiphonally. You sing, they sing back. The conversation just keeps evolving. You sing to organize, you sing to survive. You sing your solidarity, you sing your collective psyches, you sing your sensate sovereignty. Bill Deeds and Gavin Steingel muse, quote unquote, as a physical modality, hearing is a locative registration of occurrence. Sound is the proximal trace of the occurred, the perceptual byproduct of action, of happening. As such, it is essentially secondhand, always ready a delay, a deferral, a radiation of the event. Sound is not a medium in itself, but rather a disturbance, a fluctuation in the medium. Sound is necessarily bound to a source or occurrence, that is, can only be heard as a proximity to, or even a proximity between. Herein, one might also point to an implicit ethics of audibility, the second person of sounding, the you of its anonymous address. To hear is to be touched at a distance, to take in others' deferral. Any question by far?
There's no questions yet.
No question yet? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna continue. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a trilogy. This recent 3 project, I call it a trilogy. They are both concerned with loss, mourning, and its disposition, and how people who experience the loss continue with their life. So the first project is called Hazard. It was realized and produced in Jordan and Palestine. As you can see, it's commissioned by this art foundation, Amman, Jordan. Okay, sorry, let me. So this project, this exhibition, stars are closer and the clouds are nutritious under golden tree. Its exhibition revolves around the final book by the French writer Jean Genet about his movement with the Palestinian Fedayeen in Palestine, in Jordan and Lebanon in 70 and 80. And so, so when I was approached with this commission, as I started reading the book, I was very much struck by these passages in the book. One night just before dawn in January 1971, 4 months after Black September, 3 separate Fedayeen who had been on a march for some time, transferring from one base to another, were singing to each other from various hills. Between each song, I could hear the silence of the morning. Dance of daytime sound that had not yet burst forth. So, and then you have to know that Jean Genet wrote this book completely based on his memory, because he didn't write this book until 14 years after he made this travel with the Palestinian Fedayeen. And he claimed in the book that he didn't bring any notebook, he didn't write any diary. So the impression of this event was so strong that it so strong that it make up the impression of Jean Genet's light. I was just now quoting him from this book. Another writing that I came across while reading this book, The Prison of Love, was by the Palestinian theorist Edward Said on Jean Genet. So Edward Said said that Jean Genet's movement through Jordan and Lebanon had something like the effect of seismograph, that reading, drawing, and exposing the fault lines that a large normal surface had hidden. And if some of you have been to the region, like Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon, and you know that there are actually a lot of fault lines underneath the region, for including the Dead Sea. I mean, the Dead Sea itself is a massive fault lines underneath the region. So it got me to think, so what is fault line? What does fault line do to us? And I was born and grew up in Taiwan, and so everybody in Taiwan, not everybody, I mean, a lot of people know that we pretty much live with a constant earthquake. An earthquake is what happened when the two fault lines slip with one another. So here I'm very interested in thinking what fault line means, particularly in this region. So the fault line not only means the crack on the earth, but also a division between ideologies. So after much thinking, research, and a conversation with local collaborator, partner, friends, colleagues, etc., I was introduced to a very specific Palestinian oral mourning tradition called Nuwa. And here I'm going to Nuwa, phonetically spelled as Nuwah, and it is very fastly disappearing oral lament tradition in Palestine, which for many reasons has been prohibited to sing in public. And then this reason, as I was told by my Palestinian colleagues and friends, include that first, ever since the very first Intifada, because there are so many losses of life in Palestine, and then because it's just too unbearable to remember the loss. And then so there's the space of grieving has been lacking, and that result into the reluctance of openly and publicly mourning the losses of the life of the martyr. And another reason, according to my Palestinian friend, is based on the Islamic teaching that once you become a martyr, you automatically will go to heaven. So when you are in the heaven, the community are not allowed to mourn the loss of your life. So these two reasons are two of the many reasons why this lament tradition is on the brink of disappearing. So for this project, I convened a group of women performers, respectively from Palestine, Jordan, and Syria. And as we are moving looking for the fault line between Palestine and Jordan, and in the meantime, trying to teach ourselves how to do the nuwak, because they couldn't get any of the Palestinian elderly neighbor with a neighbor or family to teach them how to sing or how to do the nuwak mourning. So here you can see the first slide. We are in Ashkelon in northern Jordan, and that's where the Jean Genet and the Palestinian Fedayeen spent a lot of time in the 70s and 80s.
صالح دك الجوز والحنة يا عذراين باب الدار استنى يا صالح دك والسماك يا عذراين كاتبلنا الفراك يا صالح دك الجوز وسكينة يا عذراين حلف ما يخلينا.
And this is the valley in Ashkelon.
يا حسرتي حملوا يا حسرتي شالوا يا حسرتي كل بهب بالهوى مالوا يا حسرتي حملوا طلعت لعيوك يا حسرتي حملوا ما ودعوا مخلوق يا حسرتي حملوا طلعت الميزان يا حسرتي حملوا ما ودعوا إنسان صالح دك الجوز والحنة يا عذراين باب الدار يستنى.
And this is the Dead Sea on the side of the Jordan.
يا دارهم بل الندى بابك حزين موجع على أصحابك يا دارهم بل الندى حزين موجع على اللي بابك يا دارهم بل الندى الخوخاتك حزين موجع على اللي مات يا دارهم بل الندى لذيالك حزين موجع على الخيال.
This is in Jericho, Palestine. And now I think the question that I keep asking in making this project is, Under the weight of such a heavy history, how can the lands not break and quiver tectonically and ideologically? And I forgot to mention, the name of this project hazard is a phonetic translation of the word quiver or shaking in Arabic. And it also means, also stands for earthquake. So if landscape is a portion of land or territory that can be viewed at one time from one place, so in order to look and hear, where and how does one situate oneself in a place, particularly when one, that would be me, doesn't speak the language, nor bodily experience the trauma of the lands? And how does one navigate a place shielded with a largely normal surface, possibly akin to Janet's seismic way of scoping the landscape and whatever is hidden underneath and around? So this question of finding one's positionality has informed and guided me throughout the researching, thinking, and the making of a hazard, as well as the following project, Boron and the Fuangu, I'm going to speak of in a bit.
لا منها البارود بالوتر بتقول لا يا صاحبي ويا غبتو بتطول لا منها البارود بالوتر قالت لا يا صاحبي لا غبت طالت لا من هالبارود في الوتد بتصيح لا يا صاحبي ما لك جاري لا من هالبارود بالوتد بتغزل لا يا صاحبي ما لك عالقبر نازل لا من هالبارود بالوتر بتقول لا يا صاحبي ويا غبتو بطول لا من هالبارود بالوتد قالت لا يا صاحبي لا غبتو طالت لا من هالبارود في الوتد بتصيح لا يا صاحبي ما لك جريح لا من هالبارود بالوتد بتغسل لا يا صاحبي ما لك عالقبر نازل لا من
So you can see there's the lyrics. They are all extracted from a book titled Palestinian Mornings. And this nuwat has been historically exclusively performed by women. And that is the installation view of the work. The museum is located on a hill. So I mounted the speaker based on the elevation, the attitude of the elevation, of each recording location and relation in relation to one, like in relation to one another, like geographically. Okay. Any question by far?
There's a modern human orientation.
I lost you for like 5 seconds.
It's written about the first project. I looked at the patient script and the repetition in sections of the script because studies you sing. This repetition is something that I thought about as well actually when I was listening to this. Is that kind of the act of repetition? Then
Okay. So I'm. Oh, yeah. Hearing, they are elderly, singing nuwa and doing nuwa. So they are singing and from the memory. So how do we do this? In the morning. So for a paragraph, and they just actually, because when they were discussing in Arabic, I didn't know what they were talking about. So I couldn't really I couldn't really tell you how they do that. But from an outsider ears, or from the outsider point of view, I think what I can see and come to understand on the side is they are not singing, as that's what they have keep telling me. They are not singing. They are practicing. They are rehearsing. They are mourning, but also I think they are creating a very complex space that even themselves cannot name it, and this space is so complex. I think for me that I think it's for me it's impossible to access to the depths of the sadness and to the complexity of this time space they're creating. And the recording, they were all made live on each landscape.
you. No.
Keep cutting out.
I'll try and use the chat, but I think that's great for now. Keep going. Thank you.
Any other question? Because if not, I'm gonna move on to the next project. Yeah, okay. Okay, I think I'm gonna move on to the next project, but you can save the question for later. I think I talk about how I presented a project in a slideshow. It was presented as a four-channel sound simulation across the courtyards of the museum. And they are all on loop, and they were not synchronized. So the audience would have to move around the courtyard in the museum in order to hear the sound emanated for each speakers. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next project. Okay, so this is a project, follow the realization of the Heze project in Jordan and Palestine. I had the opportunity to make another project in Jeju Island, offshore South Korea. So at the invitation of Jeju Biennale, I set foot in Jeju Island for the first time in November 2019. The very first thing I learned about the island is its very famously strong wind. Indeed so, it was windy all around. From the airport, Jeju City, a forest, a seaport, a village to a hill. Allegedly, as far as I was told, when Jeju people speak their dialect, each sentence they utter is often very short. That's because the wind, i.e. boron, the name of the project, in Jeju phonetically spelling is translated from Jejuan dialect, because the wind, the boron, sweeps away most of the words. Such a poetic conjuring of the wind absolutely blows my mind. If the wind has the power to shape one's speech, I cannot help but wonder how might it organize the ways in which one knows and navigates a place. If Heze is about reading a place like a seismograph, then in this project, Boron, how does one make one's way about the land of the wind? Where and how does one anchor one's positionality within the wind's geography that is borderless and formless? Quote unquote, I wonder if there's something in common with Taiwan's history and its relationship to the mainland. The Korean-Japanese poet Kim Si-jong, born in 1928, pondered the commonality between Jeju and Taiwan when we're about halfway into a Skype interview in year 2000. Kim Si-jong was not the first Jejuan to pose this question to me. During my short visit to Jeju, I had found instant reports with quite a few Jejuan whom I had come across, especially when the subject of the Jeju April 3rd uprising and the massacre came up. Almost without exception, they brought up the February 28 incident massacre that occurred in 1947 in Taiwan, not long before the violence of the uprising swept across Jeju, and that forever altered the course of Taiwan's history, and the drew comparison between these two deadly tragedies. So Kim Si-jong was born in Busan, but grew up in Jeju. He became involved within the uprising after joining the Workers' Party of South Korea, and consequently ended up in Japan as a stowaway to escape from the political persecution in Jeju. So the Japanese poet Keziro Suga and a Korean-Japanese poet Shinja Kang, I approached Kim Si-jong and invited him for the interview. I was supposed to visit him in Nara, Japan in March 2020, but the outbreak of COVID-19 in East Asia at the time compelled me to cancel the trip. So instead of in-person meeting, we met virtually on the land of psyche, where trauma, pain, and a collective need to heal therefrom are perpetually engraved into. And during the 1-hour conversation, he reminisced about the wind in Jeju and how it was intertwined with the sound, the smell, the temperature, the rocks and the stone, the sea, the beach, the electric wires, the stone walls, the mountain, the songs, and the Jeju April 3rd uprising and massacre. So he said in the interview, quote unquote, the tragedy of Jeju uprising clings to my physiological experience and haunts me beyond my memory. The summer after the April 3rd uprising, a warm breeze carried the odor of rotting human carcasses floating in the air, and the wind blew down from the mountain, and the burning smell of villages on fire. All these odors mixed and overwhelmed Jeju in the uprising's aftermath. The wind carried the smells like a vortex and stayed. 70 years later, that's year 2020, he's now 93 or 94. He was recounting those moments as if they had just happened yesterday, as if the wind had inscribed them permanently into every fiber of his body. So the question at stake in this project is if the wind can carry a poet's words and paints the shared landscape of memory, much like the ways in which the wind might shape a Jejuan speech, can one follow the wind and move within the history and the geography of Jeju, i.e. the land of wind? Can one in place oneself along the movement of the wind and listen? So in thinking of all this question, and in conversation with friends, colleagues, and who I had met and or come across on Jeju Island, this project became a project consists of 6 acts. And each act is a mode of encounter between wind and very specific subjectivities. So the first act is called Winds. It's 20 recording of the wind. And this is a Kyorai forest. And you probably would ask, how did I record the wind if I cannot, if the COVID prohibited me from going there? And because I found a really, really generous sound engineer who is local Jejuan and who helped make almost all the recordings on Jeju. So this is the Bukchang port for April 3rd slaughter ground. And this 20 recording of wind are separately recorded at 20 very different locations, which part of them were mentioned by Kim Si-jong in the interview, and some of them were very pertinent to this historical tragedy. This is Guanta Island, and that's where the this is where the Kim Si-jong was hiding for 4 days and 3 nights on his stowaway fugitive journey. So that's how the 20 recording of the wind are installed as a QR code. You can scan the QR code with your smartphone and listen to each recording on your phone. And that's the installation view. And you can see on your right hand side is a very big map. That would be the Act 2. Balsa rocks. Balsa rock is a dark color, fine grain, igneous rock formed from the rapid cooling of lava. It often contains holes left by gas bubble. So balsa rock, I understand it as a geological archive of the wind. So here I created this really big map, as you can see. And on the map, you can see the direction of the ocean wave, the direction of the air, which is the wind, and the route, the fugitive route of Kim Si-jong from Jeju to Japan, and the recording, 20 recording locations on Jeju. So this act is the encounter with the wind and the balsa rocks. And the Act 3 is postcard in water. I need to explain a little bit. So Jeju has been, is a self-governing province offshore. It's a very small island offshore South Korea. And it's a self-governing province. When the civil war broke out in Yemen, they opened the border to many Yemenese refugees. So this is why I came across this Yemenese restaurant in Jeju City, where one of the owner and the chef are Yemenese refugee. So I started make this project after I finished the project in Jordan and Palestine. And here I came across a postcard written only in Arabic. So I immediately took a snapshot and sent it to my Palestinian friend who I worked with in the previous project. And then they sent me this translation by a Palestinian refugee who was living in Jeju and sent the postcard to this Yemenese restaurant. And I had my Palestinian friend reading his writing.
أنا لاجئ فلسطيني في اليمن. ربما لذلك أشعر بمدى الصعوبة التي قد تواجهونها في اللجوء. أرجو أن تنتهي الحرب في اليمن وتصبح بلداً ناجحة ومرحبة باللاجئين من جميع أنحاء العالم. أتمنى أيضاً أن تفتح الدول أبوابها للاجئين وأن تنتهي الحروب في كل مكان. شادي. لا بد من صنعاء وإن طال السفر. نتمنى لكم النجاح في مشروعكم الرائع.
So the Act 3 is the encounter between the wind and the postcard, Shadi, and the water, the Yemenese restaurant. And so the Act 4 is called Yongdong Haman. It means the goddess of the wind and the sea. So the majority of the village, the islander on Jeju, their livelihood heavily depend on the wind and the sea, because a lot of the main occupation of the Jeju islander are fishermen and like a women diver. So Yongdong Haman is one of the 30,000 deities who reside on Jeju Island, but only Yongdong Haman, the goddess of wind and the sea, doesn't reside on Jeju Island. She is the only deity who only returns to Jeju Island for 2 weeks every year on lunar February. So here you can see my collaborator, Kyung-Dak, who is recording a farewell ritual to Yongdong Haman's, like a farewell ritual to Yongdong Haman by shaman O Yongbu on the beach That's when the shaman was performing this ritual and asking the goddess of wind to wish to give blessing for the islander of Jeju Island to have very prosperous and safe harvest and good year. And so here is a little bit of the recording of the shamanistic ritual. Okay, so the Act 5 songs is a playlist provided by a Hope School member from Yemen in South Korea. Hope School was founded and located on Jeju Island with an aim to build a supportive community between island resident and newly arrived Yemenis who seek asylum in South Korea. So through a local community organizer, I got in touch with a Hope School member from Yemen. But at the time when I was connecting with her, she already relocated to Seoul from Jeju. That she already got her like a permanent residence permit. So I asked her if she would be interested in collaborating with me and then provide a playlist of song or music that she loved to hear whenever she's lonely, she misses home, or when she just want to like just feel like listening to music, or just to relax, or to hang out with friends. And she sent me this playlist of 16 songs. And most of the songs I wouldn't listen to it myself at all, but I think through her ear and through her very special relationship to this song, it gave me a very different perspective. It actually kind of I think I borrow her ear to listen to these songs very differently. And so this is an act of song, and this is the another encounter between Wang and this Yemenese woman and her song. And this act is not audible anywhere in the work. I will show you later in a bit. So this is the final act, Act 6, My Clear Clementine, Morning Dew, and My Heart. And it's a very special, like a vocal, or you could say a vocal, musical convocation between Kim Si-jong and the 3 of his Jejuan folks. Huang Yong-hil, Shaman Xiu Sun-xiu, and the performer Jun Xin-ji. And in this act, Kim Si-jong sings Jejuan folk song that his father taught him when he was little, and his Jejuan folks, they sing Morning Dew and My Heart, which they are 2 songs that very fondly mentioned by Kim Si-jong in the interview when he was talking about how he didn't realize where he come from. This place called South Korea produced such beautiful folk songs that are very, very important for the pro-democracy movement in the 80s and 90s. If you are interested in hearing all of this sound file, I can later on I can send you a link to an online exhibition that where you can click and listen to all of the sound files from Act 1 to Act 6.
태양은 묘지 위에 붉게 시련일지라 나 이제 가노라 저 거친 광야에 서러움 모두 버리고 나 이제 가노라 서러움 모두 버리고 나 이제 가노라.
So that's the installation view. All the speakers are in dialogue with one another. And that is the booklet that consisted of the interview with Kim Si-jong and some detail of each act, including the Act 5, the playlist. Okay. Any questions?
There are. Can you hear me? There are no. I'm sure people will. Maybe we keep snowballing through it and we can pick some up. It's just asked a question. Can you explain what the speakers are in dialogue with each other means?
So the speakers are the Act 4 and the Act 6. The Act 4 of the shaman, the shamanist ritual. And the Act 6 is one speaker is Kim Si-jong singing, the other speaker emanates the local Jejuan women poet, a memory of the wind and the massacre. She survived the massacre. And the third speaker is what you just heard, these women performers singing in the morning dew, this beautiful pro-democracy movement song. And then the fourth speaker would be a speaker, it will be the sound of another Jeju woman shaman who asked us to send a message to Kim Si-jong. She wanted to thank Kim Si-jong for constantly sharing the story and history and the pain of the island through his poetry.
Thank you. Yes, Simon's just said such thoughtfully researched and presented work. Thank you for sharing. There's a great question that's just come in actually from Wang. He says, hello. What are the main characteristics?
Main work. What do you mean by spaces?
Varne, are you there? Do you want to come on the mic or? No, maybe not. I think the question is getting towards this kind of thing of how you observe and prepare a space, almost the outdoor space. Like do you look for certain characteristics or things in the environment when choosing your works? I think this is what the question's getting towards.
Well, this is what I don't understand. Like, space is meaning location or the space of the installation space?
I think I can be corrected here, but I think it's the outdoor space.
I don't choose. I don't choose because the previous two projects, I mean, all these projects are quite site specific. So I didn't choose to do anything. I was invited and I was inspired by what I feel. For instance, for this project, I was very much affected by the strong wind on Jeju. So I actually, on my very first day on Jeju Island, I knew I wanted to make a project about wind. So what is challenging is how could I find a meaningful relationship between my positionality, the wind, and the history of the island. So I think wind, because I feel it's because I think it has to do with the sensation, because I feel this very, very like unforgettable sensation with the wind, and it affects me deeply. And if I feel this deeply, it must have had a complete, even much more profound impact on the islander who were born or lived there for a very long time. And I think for me, I'm very interested in how this strong force, whether it's natural or political or linguistic or physical, how they shape their speech, their sound, and their way of life. So thinking of this question as a point of departure, I kind of started to like research into what might make sense for me to consider, and most of all, what is accessible to me. Because I think in the very first project, when I was quoting Bill Dietz and Gavin Steingel's writing on sound is second hand, sound is to be touched, or listening to is to be touched, which I completely agree on. Right now, in the past, I was quite a believer on listening is knowing, but then I didn't put it into context. I think that each context in each distinct location is very different from one another, and especially when I am a stranger, sometime when I spend a little bit more time, I become a guest, but it doesn't really warrant my full access or even like half of the understanding to the maximum complexity of what is sounding to my ears.
That's a great response. There's another question just come in from Simon. I've recorded a lot of wind. I live in a very windy place, but you've presented it so poetically and made me think about it in ways I haven't before. I think a lot about how wind.
Thanks for sharing, Simon.
Actually made me think like a conduit for stories as well, and for a kind of a carrier of voice. And going back to one of the early works you presented, the of wind, and these were sort of my own poetic musings, I suppose. But if I go back to, there's a question that we started off with about the space and the characteristics that you just answered in many ways. But if I could be really pragmatic and ask about what are the differences or the challenges for you when you present a work in situ, like in a site-specific outdoor location, versus when it comes back into the gallery? Because the gallery always, in the documentation, it feels very, very neat when one presents, but I'm imagining there's lots of process behind that as well. Can you talk about the two?
The Hazard project in Jordan, I was there in person, and it was very obvious to me. It was very clear to me from the very beginning. I wanted to install it outdoors because, in a way, to pay homage to the way the Palestinian Fedayeen would sing to each other. Because it just happens so that the museum is located on hills too. But whereas for the Boron project, to tell the truth, I was not there. I didn't install the work in person. It was the museum who did all the install for me. And at first, I was proposing to do it outdoors. But I think because due to certain logistics reason, it turned out to be impossible. Yes. So the challenge is, it always feel a little bit timid. I think the challenge is how you can create a social space in a museum, in this very white cube museum space, which is not always my favorite. But I think the curator, I think what he saved the project is he gave me 3 spaces, because I was very insistent that the audience will have to move. They will have to walk around, move around within a space, rather than just sit on a bench and listen to the sound. And so he provided 3 rooms, and where each act was kind of a place within a certain distance from one another, and which is a way to encourage the audience to just to get up and not to sit around. And the Act 2, the big map, is actually made of the fabric is very light. So and then it's very purposefully light, so that when you walk past it, because when you walk past it, your movement create the air. It push the air, and the map, it would sort of like wave as you were walking by. So that is a kind of like compromise I made. To install the work inside a white cube space.
Interesting. I love the detail of that, like thinking and process as well, and always nice to have a generous curator who can give you 3 spaces. Zach Scott has asked a great question. Some compassion.
Okay. I don't consider my work to be activist. I'm far from being an activist. But what I am very concerned in my practice is there are many type of sounds that are silenced, or, to quote Zach, unlistened. That's because the limitation of a human hearing faculty. Because we don't listen, or we cannot listen, or because we didn't pay attention, for many, many reasons, they are active. Just because they are soundless to human ears doesn't mean that they don't exist. So they are not knowable. They are actually knowable. And so in my practice, I think what I am more concerned is what a work of art, or you could say what an artistic project or an artistic endeavor, what kind of process a project can engage with to reach toward the sounds that we cannot hear, because they are active. Because they are active, but we cannot hear it. Does it make sense?
Makes sense to me, and it relates back to and Zach said yes, thank you. Goes back to that Sadir Hartman quote as well. The kind of the unknown in sonic knowledge, and keeping that space of not, it's always a dilemma, I think, within practices, kind of like in the sonic, but there's also
Voice is cutting out.
show us, or do you want me to keep doing some questions now?
It would be great to have more questions before I move on to the next project.
more in the chat, but I just have a question about working with people, and I think it was in the first project you showed. You said you made a protocol about not being further than 1 meter apart, and I just wanted to know a bit more about that, like how you made that protocol with people. What was that process of agreement?
Because we spend a lot of time inside of the reservoir, and then, as you can imagine, it's really reverberant, and it's very quick. It didn't take us much time to realize to find out that we cannot really hear each other at all if we are like more than 1 meter apart. So we were discussing, okay, so what do we do when we're performing the script? Because I think because I really don't want the audience to hear every word we said in the performance, because what we were trying to convey or to carry is a history that comes from a geography that's so far from Zurich, and even I'm from Taiwan. Even I'm very familiar with this dissident history, but I still think that there's a limit for me of my embodied experience because I didn't live in that town. So even for me, there's a barrier for me to reach toward, this maximum complexity of the sound, even if it's just a sound of the water or it's just a sound of the creek. But that is the sound, according to my friends who have been involved in the movement since the 90s, that is exactly the type of sound they want to preserve. And so even I couldn't access to the depths of the struggle. I think that it would be important to try to make this inaccessibility come across in the performance, in the reservoir in Zurich. So when we came up with this protocol, yes, we wanted to be able to hear each other, but we don't want to guarantee that the audience would hear every word that we said. So for the audience and for us, it's a struggle to listen. But which is exactly the point. Yeah, it's a struggle. Project of the reservoir away, like as far away as possible, and as impossible as possible for the villager in this town.
Very aware. So in Honkai, I think keep presenting, and I'll monitor the chat.
Well, I think we have half hour left, right? Okay, I'm going to speak really quickly about the next project. Okay. Okay. When I first visited Socionagana, another name for this is Ali Shan, Ali Mountain, which stands for the place to chop pine trees in the indigenous Zhou language in Taiwan. I was just a wide-eyed senior high school freshman. Socionagana is best known as Ali Shan in Mandarin Chinese. So at the time in high school, together with some of my classmates, we took a 5-day hike up the mountain with the aim to see the world-famous sunrise and the cloud sea atop. Nowadays, I cannot remember much about the trip, except the breathtaking, otherworldly sceneries all around. The forest, millennium old trees, the mist, the valleys, the ravines, the starry sky, the changing flora as one moves up the altitude, the different sounds between days and night, etc. The trip take place about half a year after the decade-long martial law was lifted in Taiwan. The society had just begun to unravel, but the ideological power in schooling was still in reign. However, our geography class was a rare exception. Now, in retrospect, the earliest moment of something remotely close to a decolonization of thought might have arrived when the teacher Wu Jinxi, our geography teacher, introduced the notion of indigenous to us. He talked about the dispossession of the land, forced assimilation, unfair trades, and the structural racism that indigenous people had been subjugated to throughout history and the present time on the island. Years later, I still vividly remember that this revelation felt like a ball of lightning smashing wide open my small, ignorant settler's world. That being said, though, throughout the hike, I had not the faintest inkling of how deeply this indigenous Zhou nation in Alishan, the Zhou Seo Ghana, had been scarred and torn apart by the communist cleansing movement underneath the largely normal surface in Taiwan. I had only come to learn of that history and the murderous oppression of the then emergent indigenous autonomous movement until the early 1990s, as classified intelligence records from the dictatorial era were gradually being unsealed. So the protagonist of this project, Fuengu, the Zhou composer Wu Yong at Yatao Wungana, born in 1908 and then passed in 1954. Better known for his Han Chinese name Gao He-shen, was one of the Zhou indigenous thinker and a political leader who got arrested and executed for accusation of treason and corruption by the ruling regime without any trial in the early 1950s, following his involvement in the aforementioned February 28 incident and massacre. So in 2020, I had the opportunity to make a project in Alishan with the guidance of Wu Yong's family. In Wu Yong's final prison letter in 1954, he wrote, "My soul will always watch over the farmlands and the mountain." Wu Yong had always known that he was born in the mountains and would eventually find his resting place there, whether in his corporeal form or otherwise. In November 2020, I visited his grave for the very first time alongside his son, Ave, in Keubana at the heart of their community, Tapangu. Wu Yong was arrested in Keubana, to where he had yearned for an eventual return day and night throughout his incarceration, as conveyed in his prison letters. I initially got in touch with Ave, with the family of another indigenous political prisoner, Voyu Tosku. Voyu Tosku's his father was incarcerated shortly after Wu Yong for his involvement in another indigenous Zhou politician treason offense case, but released shortly after, like 4 years later. So upon the release, the Tosku family was forced into exile and has not returned to Alishan ever since. He said to me, "When the bird's nest is overturned, no eggs stay unbroken." Voyu ruefully described the way in which he feels toward his ancestral home in Alishan, i.e. Seo Ghana. He said to me, "It appears crystal clear to me that I and my offspring will probably never ever go back to Alishan because we got nothing left." In our many conversations, he was always very vocal about his impossible return to Alishan. Ayon's family, on the contrary, has kept their estate in Tapangu, despite most of them has been residing elsewhere, but Alishan. At a public memorial ceremony in 2020 that I attended, Ave addressed to the audience, quote unquote, a Zhou elder once told me, my father's soul can never ever be allowed to rest in Alishan, especially in this sacred mountain, Ho-Chubu. It's a sacred mountain for Zhou in afterlife. Even though Ave spoke in a rather soft, nonchalant manner and didn't further explain why his father was disavowed by his indigenous community, even in the form of soul, as a soul, his sadness was infectious at full volume. So it gets me think, if Wu Yong's soul was truly denied in his home mountain, and if he was indeed watching over the mountain, as he said he would, can we paraphrase James Baldwin's confession about the complex fate of being American exile, that for Wu Yong's family, quote unquote, perhaps home is not a place, but simply an irrevocable condition. In this spirit, Ken Fuengu, it means mountain in the indigenous Zhou language. So Ken Fuengu refer to not only mountain, lands, and Wu Yong's home in Keubana, but also a geography, a condition, a consciousness, a psychic world, and perspective, and an unspeakable borderland. So I was standing in front of Wu Yong's grave in Keubana with Ave and my colleague Nianpu. I clasped my hands and prayed to Wu Yong in a way that a Buddhist would do. I asked silently if he would point me the way as to how one can navigate a space of entanglements between those who are cast away from the mountain, those who stay in the mountain, and those who, like myself, as a Han Chinese settler descendant, don't belong yet profoundly implicated. So the question is, Art, if one is to follow your musical trajectory, how and what can one hear through your music? I was asking Wu Yong. The Canadian Indigenous series Dylan Robinson, in his seminal book Hungry Listening, reminds us that Indigenous ontology of song asks us to reorient what we think, what we are listening to, and how we go about our practices of listening with responsibility to listen differently, while requiring us to examine how we have become fixated, how listening has in fact been fixed. Dylan Robinson's proposition offers a way to confront one's fixed ears, a desire to, quote unquote, prioritize the capture and the certainty of information over the affective feel, timbre, touch, and texture of sound, as a point departure for different ways of listening, not only to Wu Yong's music and the sound of Alishan, but also to vibration and touch of the wind in Jeju Island, as well as the tectonic and seismic frequency in Palestine and Jordan. So the question I kept asking myself, and also all of you, is what is it that we think that we are listening to? You probably will wonder why I'm reading so smoothly, because they are the introduction of my upcoming PhD dissertation. Okay, so this is the word that my Zhou friends taught me. I don't know how to pronounce it adequately. It sounds like Tamayazoi. It means listening in Zhou language, and it constitutes 3 strata. 1, listening, knowing, and yielding, meaning to submitting. And that is a passage in Lyndon Robinson's book that I like very much, that I wanted to share with you. You are listened to by the land, a distant sound comes, faint and carried by the air, then ring in my ear. So in this project, I think this is a very, very challenging and difficult project for me. For a while, I really didn't know what to do with it or what to do about it. But it was through my year-long research, conversation, and a meeting with Wu Yong's family that subsequently informed me how to go about, how to make a project that would reference or would pay homage to their relationship, to their home, that is the Alishan, the mountain. So here, together with my sound recordist, who has been an old friend of the Zhou community and who has been given a Zhou name. So we travel from one place to another, from one village to another, and to collect the sound of the mountain and to get to know the sound of the mountain and to get to listen. What is it that we are actually listening or not listening? Or what is it that we are knowing or not knowing? This is Rainbow Waterfall. It's a legendary waterfall. Now it's completely dry, but according to the legend, this is where the ancestor of Zhou learned to make music. And the way, so they told me that the way the ancestor make music is to come to the Rainbow Waterfall and to sit behind the waterfall and just listen to the sound of the waterfall for day and night. And then when you go home in the night and you wait for the music to manifest in your dreams. And that's the origin. That's how the music of Zhou was born, from the dream and from the listening to the water and to the mountain. This project, later I will show you the installation shots. This project constitutes 3 layers of sounds. And the first layer of sound are the sound of the field recording, which means the sound of the mountain. The sound of the mountain, for instance, the sound of the water, the wind, the insects, the people, the airplane, the air, the animal, etc., etc. And the second layer are the song and the sound made by the friends and the kins of Wu Yong's family. And so here is the song, hunting song, written by Wu Yong and sung by Alishan Elementary and Junior High School, who very, very generously offered to sing for this project. And this is the sacred mountain where the spirit, the soul of the disease family will return to this mountain. And Tabangun is the home village of Wu Yong's family. Kualayana is where they used to have their farm, and that's also the farm that Wu Yong was begging his family not ever to sell to anybody, because he would love to be able to return one day, which he never did in his physical human form. So this is a song called Pasu Ho Tsubu. It's not written by Wu Yong, but it's written collectively by a village And in order, they wrote and sing this song in order to guide the soul of the dead indigenous soldier who died during the Second World War to return to the sacred mountain. So when we met this indigenous performer, Yumi, she told me that she wanted to sing this song for the project, and I didn't know what it was. And then when I played this recording back to Wu Yong, to Ave, the son of the Wu Yong, the composer, and he said to me, "This is the song. This is the song of Patsu Hosubu." And then I was really, really surprised, but very, very pleasantly surprised, because at the time I thought maybe Yumi did it totally intentionally. Maybe in secret, she wanted to guide the soul of the Wu Yong to return to the sacred mountain. And you probably remember in the earlier, when I was saying that according to the Zhou elder, that the Wu Yong soul was denied at the entrance of this sacred mountain.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
So this is a song written by Wu Yong. It was sung by his niece, whose father was also a political prisoner. So these are the third layer of sound that and the music sung by his family. So these are the grandchildren of Wu Yong and the son, Ave, of Wu Yong. that's Wu Yong's daughter who lives in Tokyo, and she's also recorded a song.
そよはとおみやねまくいさな Huhuts masip suevo kuto pea nacional Iku kuyong vi hupai kuyong vi Ma to yo ha As vuts af siten ap so vjok Ma to yo ha Yo to miane makuhisana Yong huji yo hana Huts masip so vyoku
So this is the installation, and there's a star map on the top of it, which I want to explain a little bit. So, you know, in Jackie Wang's book, Prison Abolition, Abolitionist Imagination, a Conversation, she recounts a conversation in the documentary Nostalgia for the Light between a director and a former political prisoner under the Augusto Pinochet dictatorship. What did you feel watching the star while in prison? And the prisoner, former prisoner, reflected. We all had a feeling of great freedom, observing the sky and the stars, marveling at the constellation. We felt completely free. The military banned the astronomy lessons. They were convinced that the prisoner could escape, guided by the constellation. So if there was any slightest mercy in prison, the military in Taiwan didn't ban Wu Yong from watching the star. His prison letter indicate very clearly that he was allowed to observe the sky from his cell window every day at night and at dawn. And he used to watch the star with his family in the mountain when he was a free man. This star map is a simulation, dating from the day he was put into jail throughout his incarceration to the final day when he was taken away and executed. And here you can see this like small circle. There are two speakers inside playing the sound and the song sung by his family and surrounded by the sound and the song sung by his kin and the friends in the mountain. And the outermost circle sound is the sound on the mountain. So I think you could say that in this project was trying to navigate and trying to map out this affective geography of Wu Yong's family, like basing their like a most like intimacy with one another as a center, and the radiating out across the mountain. So you can see this is the close-up of the simulation historical star map. So in this museum installation space, the audience, the sound are not very loud, but you can sort of make out what the sound are. And as you move closer and closer to the circle underneath the star map, you can hear the sound of the ambience of Ave's family, of their talking, kind of just conversing with one another, and they rehearsing music together because they are all musicians. And as you are moving toward the center, you will walk, you will listen through, or you could say the sound will pass you through, the sound from the mountain, the sound from the friends and the kins of Wu Yong's family. They will guide you into this very intimate, most safe, the safest space, which is the circle underneath the star map. And that's what the Wu Yong used to do with his family for many, many nights when he was a free man. And that's again, that's we printed a small booklet including all the lyrics and explanation of each song by Wu Yong, and each song that has been recorded and included in this project. Okay, so now we got 7 minutes left.
We do. We've got 7 minutes of my voice breaking up constantly. Okay, there is a quote that Anne has popped in the chat that I think this is from what you were thinking. This line that really stood out: "Home is not a place, but an irrevocable condition." Really powerful sentence. I think there's no question. It's just.
Giovanni's room, if anyone is interested.
Good question.
I'm not hearing your voice. Should I respond to Guiren's question? Okay. How would the people interact and engage with the sound and the space? You mean in the museum space? Well, I know that some people really cannot hear anything because this project is part of the much bigger group show. So there were a lot of like interference from other work, like adjacent work. But I do also hear people like who can hear a lot. So I think it's a question of how much an audience is willing to make effort to listen. And yes, and I do know that usually I ask a lot from the listener. For instance, in the project in Jordan, the sound were not loud too. But I think that because there's no interference except the ambience. So I think that I think the way people engage with that project was much better than the way the audience we engage in the museum space. Because in the museum courtyard, it's a standalone project. There's no other work around. But in the museum, there are always. I mean, when we walk into a museum, usually we are immediately switched to a short attention span. I think that's kind of like a default mode of listening and viewing. Unfortunately. And the second and third project, why did you choose form of melody, vocal sound as part of your work? What is your attitude? How did you balance relation between sound and music when you create work? Why did I choose the form of melody? Okay, I think that this kind of happened very organically, to be honest. Because in the second project, the Palestinian and Jordanian project, at first I didn't really quite know what to do, and until I was introduced to Noah, but mind you, Noah is not singing. That's what my Palestinian friend keeps stressing to me. They are not singing. So, so I didn't choose. It sort of just kind of happened, and it just before upon me. And the second project, and then when I was interviewed for the second project, when I was interviewing Kim Si-jong, he specifically wanted to talk about the danger of song, and which was very, very intriguing and inspiring and very critical, and which got me very interested in continuing working with the form of singing and the vocal work. If you're interested, you can go to Maebashi. I'm going to type here. You can go to their website, and you will see the online installation, and from which you can download the booklet with the Kim Si-jong's interview. But anyway, in the interview, he said, song cannot critique. Song don't contain criticism. And why did he say that? Because in the 1920s and the 30s, like he said, the Japanese Empire, when he was a kid growing up in Japan colonized Korea, the empire came to him in very sweet Japanese melody. And then even up to this day, he still believes that the Japan probably produced the biggest volume of very sweet, like a nursery rhyme and a children's song. And then all these children's songs came out of this really big movement in the 1920s and 30s. But he sang this song, but in the meantime, the Japanese soldier who committed war crime during the Second World War, they also sing exactly the same song. And in fact, this song enabled the Japanese soldier, make it possible for them to kill, because when they sing the song, then it helped them to remember their family. So this is like this is why he say that a song cannot critique, the song cannot criticize. And in Bill Deeds and Gavin Steingold's text, they argue about very similar point. You can look it up. It's called what was it called? I will send it to you, Mark, just in case any student is interested. So, but in the text, they were arguing that we cannot trust music because music is very slippery. But actually, what is slippery is us. It's the people who sing it. And so, inspired by both Kim Si-jong's singing and then Gavin and Bill's argument, I decided. So I wanted to investigate and think more critically toward the form of song and singing further. So, which explain why I chose the form to incorporate into these three projects. Okay. We're out of time, right?
We're spot on time, so that's wonderful. I think it would be good to leave it there, especially as my voice is going. Thank you so much.